I was on a client engagement a few weeks back. Simple change, a design spec update, updating things across a couple of components, across a few pages of the app. And I did what I usually do. I wrote the spec. I called out parts of the code that needed to be changed. I listed all the pages that needed to be updated. And I handed it off to my favorite agent and took a break, came back, and it told me that everything was done. And I was excited. It was a pretty easy job, but a hefty job. And again, AI is supposed to do this. It's supposed to be easy. And it all looked good until I took the time to actually look at what it did. First thing that I did was I read the beautifully formatted markdown document that this agent created. It said, I did this. It was confident and happy. And again, confident, not in a malicious way, but it said that, yep, I did the work. And so I ran it. And when I ran it, I saw that there were entire pages that were not complete. And I knew why that happened. It's mainly because it didn't update a set of files that would have already updated those other pages. And that's essentially where we are with AI right now. It does things, it confidently lets you know that it does it, and you think that it's done and you're ready to ship. And I almost was ready to ship. And imagine what would have happened to that client's relationship with me if I said, hey, we're done. I sent it out there. And the moment that they open up the app or if they click around in a few places, they realize that no, it's actually not done. And so I went into the code base, looked at the changes, pointed to where it needed to be changed, made some manual changes myself. And then I realized that if I didn't really know the code base, and it was a few minutes, maybe 15 minutes, but if I didn't really know where to look, if I didn't spend weeks inside of the architecture, understanding how the design system actually worked, I would not be able to solve the problem in that short period of time. And what I realized is that moment of me knowing, pointing, changing, and shipping, that moment is becoming increasingly rare. And if you were a CEO in 2026 and you're hiring engineers, that is the type of moment that you should be hiring for. Engineers that know the code base and not know from an intellectual level, but really know exactly where something is, that muscle memory, that the ability to understand that, hey, this is broken, I know exactly why it's broken, and I know exactly how to fix it. And if you're not hiring for that right now, then you're behind the ball. Ken Vermeille, this is the Vermillion Podcast. Today, how to hire engineers in 2026. Why CEOs are mostly uniquely prone to getting this wrong, and the one trait that you need to filter for that nobody is talking about. Let's go. There's a phrase that I've been using internally and sometimes on Twitter, and that's called AI psychosis. And the thing about CEOs is that they are uniquely, I guess, prone to catching the AI psychosis. Now, the reason why is because as a CEO, you are the furthest away from the last mile delivery. You spend your time in boardrooms, getting investments, learning about what the customer wants, but you're not in the code base. You're not in the feature spec. I mean, sure, you'll look at the demo, you'll read the status updates, you'll make sure that all the agent dashboards light up green, you'll make sure that your application is up and running, but it's not the same as actually being in the code base and knowing what's going on in the code base, which is also why most CEOs think that everything is going to be fully automated, but that's never going to be the case. And here's why. When it is 11 p.m. and something breaks on a Friday and nobody knows how to fix it because everybody was just coding willy-nilly and not actually taking the time to really understand their code, then everybody's screwed. And you don't want to be screwed. I wouldn't want you to be screwed. So how do we fix this? Well, not how do we fix it, more like how do we change our mindset around AI tooling so that we understand it and also make it so that it's not a liability, because that's what it becomes after you've generated a lot of code. Now, AI coding agents allow us to code. It's incredibly powerful. The speed, the volume, the ability to say, do this thing, and it generally does that thing. That makes it seem that, that software engineering is completely solved. But a lot of the times when you say, hey, go do that thing, it kind of sort of does it, and it doesn't do it completely. And if it doesn't do it completely, or if it creates an abstraction that makes it seem like it's working and nobody knows that it's wrong, now you're in liability territory. Now you're shipping bugs that break over the weekend. Now everybody's scrambling to figure out what's going on. And nobody on the team has the muscle memory to know that, okay, and at this file on line 117, we flip this thing around and then it works. Without that, you're in a pretty bad position. Let me give you an example of, the work that we've been doing. So, early on, I spoke about the design spec that we were working on, and essentially that happened. But the way that we do our development work is anything that gets committed to code, it needs to be read by a human, mainly because AI doesn't have like a long context. Yes, it might have a million token context, but it's not actually a million tokens. It's kind of filled with stuff, memory, the agent's understanding of your code base as it is in that point of time, but it doesn't have the long-term memory. Uh, it doesn't have the, hey, we made this decision in sprint 16 that we're no longer going to do this, or it doesn't have the new design spec that the CEO said, hey, we are moving towards this type of design. Here are the inspirations. Here's how we should implement this into our application. It doesn't know how the entire team wants the application to make it feel. Yes, you could kind of codify this in design.md files or other things, but to be honest, when your agent has been running for 40 minutes, a lot of that stuff gets compressed and gets thrown out. And if you think that it's just easy enough to say, well, we're just going to use another agent and give it a fresh context and work from that perspective, that workflow only works if you have an engineer hand-holding the agent and making it so that it's able to get the feature done. I hear a lot about spec-driven development, and where you write a spec and then you get it to work. And then you have other agents kind of doing their own thing. And it does work for the most part. But the judgment layer and the knowing layer, that still lives within the engineer. It doesn't matter how many agent files that you write. It doesn't matter how much, I guess, instructions that you write for the agent. The engineer is still, a good engineer is still moving and shaping and ensuring that it's moving in the right direction. That doesn't happen out of just, hey, AI coding tool, do this for me. It happens over time. It happens when the engineer is sitting there, during normal work hours and saying, oh no, we're not going to make this decision. Or, hey, or in my case, these pages are wrong. It's mainly because this needs to be updated. I guess you didn't see that, even though I called it out in the spec. It's totally fine. I'm going to sit with the agent and we're going to do it. Or I'm just going to say, I found a more efficient way of doing this, and then I'm going to do it that way. Knowing where to look, knowing the code base, and determining, hey, if this breaks, I'll fix this because it's over there. Or if we're going to create a new feature, it needs to start from this. Or if we're going to change the design, we need to modularize the design system. That knowing is the entire job right now. And if you're actually a CEO who hasn't been in your code base, but you are paying for those AI credits, when you see $1,000 bill from one engineer to implement a feature that should have cost $100, you might be thinking, hey, that engineer is not so great. Or it could be that engineer is saving you from a much larger fire. The French have two ways of saying to know: savoir and connaître. One means to know intellectually, the facts, the mechanisms, to be able to write what it means on paper. The other means to know by acquaintance, the way that you know your wife's face, or the way that you know how to navigate your kitchen in the dark. I know Flutter intellectually. I've even built apps on Flutter. I've debugged, shipped apps using Flutter. But I know React Native and native engineering. I know that when a screen is a little bit choppy when scrolling, it probably means that somebody's using a scroll view and not a flat list. I know that when a bunch of notification or permission pop-ups happen all at once, I know that there could be race conditions or things that make the experience not so great for the end user. I know these things. I don't have to open up Stack Overflow. I don't have to ask ChatGPT. I don't have to take the time or I would say even waste AI credits on figuring out how this mechanism works because I know it. I've seen it break. I have examples of where it seemed to work and didn't work, and I know the reasons why it looks like it's working. And I even know the core underlying layer of the native code and why and how React Native maps onto the view hierarchy in Android and the differences between how it works on Android and iOS. These are things that I know deeply. And this comes from experience. This comes from also me deciding that I'm going to spend a weekend reading the React Native technical papers. It means that I'm going to look at the recent pull requests. This is going to be something that I do for fun because I'm passionate about it. That kind of knowing is insurance. It's insurance against all of that AI generated code. When the agent says, hey, work is done, everything is good, we're ready to ship, it's the engineer who heart knows the platform that can spot that gap in 30 seconds and say, no, we got some more work to do. But the engineer who knows it intellectually won't be able to spot that bug and they'll ship it. Now, here's the uncomfortable truth of what's going on and the moment that we're living in right now. Senior developers are usually able to capture this and see this thing because, they've worked with other junior developers in the past. They've made some of the mistakes that the agents have made in the past, and they have a clearer understanding of the code base, and they also strive to know the code base more. But on the junior side, they're going to prompt their way out of the situation, often using more AI credits and also not building that skill in being burnt, in trying something, seeing it fail, trying it again, typing out that code in their own hands. They're not going to build that skill of knowing the code base, knowing what breaks, knowing why it breaks, and really learning that reinforcement doesn't happen. And it's kind of broken throughout the entire industry. There is no real path anymore other than extreme discipline to getting a junior level engineer or programmer into a senior seat. And the other part is all of the people who have that senior knowledge, those people are starting to retire. And as time goes on, that pool of people gets smaller and smaller. And from what I see, there's no way to actually reconcile that. Let's put a number on this. A great, exceptional engineer needs maybe $200 or $300 max a month in AI credits. And you can divide that amongst Codex, Claude, Cursor, whatever it is that the engineer likes, right? Also, kind of sidebar, if your engineer comes to you and says, hey, these are the tools that I like, just go with the tool. Give them a budget. Let that budget rock. End of sidebar. When it comes to pricing, a good engineer needs that much max. And what I see in the news and what I see, kind of across the board are two messages going out simultaneously by the same companies. One company says use as many AI credits as possible. Just never type, never even open an ID. Just go crazy with the credits. And the same company, a few weeks later, like literally last week, essentially says, "Hey, no, we're actually using too many credits." They actually got the bill and they looked at it and they said, "Wow, this bill is as much as just doubling our workforce." Both approaches are incorrect. Now, what we know and see today is that AI is a scarce resource. And as engineers, we've always been using scarce resources, whether that be CPU power, memory, throughput, server costs. The engineering is using the skill of taking a scarce resource and making that work for you. That's the engineering part. Even if you take that out of computer programming or out of software development or app development, and you bring that into the analog world, it's the same thing, taking scarce things and using it to the best of its ability. Now, when we have a developer who spends $1,000 implementing a feature that should have actually costed the company maybe 12 cents, that's a bad engineer. But they're being told to spend $1,000 on a feature that should be less. Now, the great engineer who says, okay, I'm going to spend $1, literally $1, to prompt my AI agent to actually do this work, that engineer is a great engineer. Now, what do you think the difference is between these engineers? One engineer knows the code base. They could point to a file, they could point to a code block and say, hey, I want you to do this, 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 and this. And they might have some agent orchestration that does a bunch of other stuff, but they generally know what the effects of the changes of the code base will be. And because of that, they're incredibly efficient and they don't burn through their AI budget in a sitting. The other developer or engineer, not agent, but they take the time to prompt and prompt and prompt, and the feature doesn't work, and so they prompt again some more, and then they don't, look at Stack Overflow, and hey, maybe they might have the a ChatGPT subscription or a Claude subscription, and then they look and they try something over there, and then they just burn through credits and get to the $1,000 mark. Now on the scoreboard, yes, there are companies that have scoreboards of people who are using the most AI credits, which to me is crazy, but whatever, to each their own. On the scoreboard, it looks like that person is doing an amazing job burning through the credits. But in reality, they spent $1,000 on engineering time because we're not even taking into their hourly costs. We're not taking that into account. But they spent $1,000 on something that should have cost $1. That doesn't really make any sense. As a CEO or a CTO, you're not really just paying for AI credits. What you're really paying for is the judgment behind those and how it gets spent. How do you find judgment? Not by traditional hiring. I'll tell you that. The way that we hire engineers today is completely different. if you send them a take-home test or a coding test or anything like that, just assume that everybody has ChatGPT or Claude or Codex. Just assume that you're handing whatever that task is directly into your AI. And the interesting thing is, I tried to create a system around that. I literally tried to create like something that would like stoop the AI, and we're not doing any of that anymore. So what works for me is I want to see what you've actually built. I mean, resumes are good. I don't look at resumes. I want to see the projects that you've done. I want to hear about the stories that you had when you couldn't figure something out for 3 weeks and you tried this and you tried that and it didn't work. Yes, I want to see what you've done in production. I want to see what you've launched. Those things, it can't be faked. And unfortunately, when you decide to hire, or if you even decide to put out any type of public facing thing saying that you are hiring, you end up being put into a specific type of hell. This is how it works. You say that I'm going to, I'm looking for an engineer, or you put out, you do the worst thing ever is you put out a public job post, and immediately you will have 5,000 resumes sent to you every which way or form. They'll send it to you by carrier pigeon. They'll send it to you by smoke signal. If you say things like, do not contact the team directly, they're 1,000% going to contact the team directly. Not only are they going to contact the team directly, they're going to contact you, CEO or CTO, and they're going to contact you on your personal email. They'll find a way to get your phone number, your secret Instagram account. It's not even secret anymore. They will send you their resume through your Instagram account. And you're going to deal with a bunch of people. You're going to deal with recruiters. Even if you type in no recruiters, you're going to deal with people who are willing to move to work with you. So if you say, look, I'm looking for people locally, you're going to get people who are going to move locally. And so, like, edit your even if you edit your job post to say, hey, we're looking for this specific type of person, what you will find is that the AI resume, well, the job finder tools are using internal AI that modifies the resume in, I guess, real time to make sure that it's specifically aligned for your job post. And it's just not a good situation. And this is not a situation that another AI HR tool can solve. It's completely ruined, right? And the really funny part about it is that, yeah, you will get 5,000 resumes, but there's probably one, maybe two people that you would actually want on your team. And this is a variety of reasons, skill issues. Really, it's just skill issues. Uh, Maybe you'll find that diamond in the rough, maybe you won't, but it's an incredible waste of time. And the people who are actually applying to that job post, they don't even know that they're applying to it. They don't know your job. Even if you ask for a cover letter, again, you'll receive a cover letter with 1,000 M dashes, essentially saying that due to the rapid changing structure of the gobbledygook here, gobbledygook there, in this fast-paced world of, you'll get a bunch of that, and it sucks, really. So don't do that. Don't even go and put out a job post. What I think that you should do instead is ask your internal engineers, like, hey, who, if you don't have if you have engineers, so there is a case where you don't have an engineer at all and you're starting from scratch. If you don't have an engineer, find an engineer friend that you respect who's been doing this for some time. And if you do have engineers, ask your engineers around you, ask them, hey, like, who is it that you'd love to work with? Like, do you have any friends or people around you who who's like pretty good, who would work and fit within our stack. Now, the reason why you want to lean on your engineers is because one, they most definitely have somebody in mind or somebody that they respect. And two, if they bring somebody to work with them, they're not going to bring somebody mediocre because that person is going to have to work with them. Engineers hate working with people who are mediocre. They don't want to bring somebody on and then they suck and they are carrying their load, they're doing their work, and they're also having to they don't like that. They're they don't like it. So if you get a recommendation from an engineer, take it seriously, work with that engineer because it'll work. Because there's no way that a public job, I mean, maybe you'll get lucky, maybe you have a 9-step interview process that filters through that, but really, what is the cost of the 9-step interview process? Like, what is you know, you might spend $30,000-$40,000 in employee costs and in software and everything just to maybe sort of kind of find that engineer, or you can follow my way of filtering out and actually getting a solid engineer, even with having the like for step one is get that engineer talent or that engineer friend on your side. And then step two, implement something like this. When you're going to implement this hiring process, before we get into that, there's one thing that you do need to know. You do want to hire somebody that's passionate not only about programming, but they're passionate about something else. They need to be good at more than just typing on a computer or prompting on a computer. The reason being is that if they are good at one thing, they could bring in that extra insight and bring that into the development world. The development world is not, it's all digital, right? We know the best way to do X or Y or Z, but the big leaps actually come from dealing with the real world. And you could even say that programming language like C++, like the jump between C and C++, that jump happened because we took a real world context of, they weren't classes, but, polymorphism. We took that context and put that into programming and it made things much better. And so if I'm looking for somebody, I'm going to look for a master WordPress developer who also was a yo-yo champion, and they still go to yo-yo champion, yo-yo meetups on the side. And it's funny because we do have somebody who is on our team that is actually a yo-yo champion. But if they are good enough to become a champion in yo-yoing, they're also exceptional enough to do whatever it takes to be good. And that passion will shine through. And so when we are looking for it, and in the event that you do have to put out a public job post, what you're going to want to do is require a cover letter. And I know that sounds like super simple. And I was like, yeah, I definitely put a cover letter there, and I still got 5,000 resumes. In the cover letter, you do a few things. You don't ask them anything about your company because whatever's public on your company is going to get thrown to ChatGPT and it's going to get spit out, and you're going to get the same thing over and over again. What you do want to ask them is you want to ask them about their life experience, what they've faced, if they have faced anything specifically that is related to your stack. So let's say if you have the MySQL stack, let's say tell me about something that happened in XYZ. Here are the topics that you could choose, and then have them write that. Then in the same cover letter, you then get them to talk about their passion. Now, if they are passionate about it, you're most likely going to get more of the passion portion of the resume of the cover letter than the actual, hey, tell me about something breaking in the past, right? If they are passionate, they are going to take the time and do this. This filter is not a test of, it's not a writing test, right? They may or may not write well, They just need to write in a way that's important because they are going to be communicating with other developers, and so they do have to have some type of good communication. But you judge them on that passion. That passion cannot be faked. You cannot fake it with AI. You can kind of sort of fake it with AI, but once at resume 28, you'll kind of see which ones are being written with AI and which ones aren't. The other thing is some people they just won't fill out the cover letter. They'll skip that portion. And those people, you could immediately throw that in the garbage. And the other thing about cover letters that you should do is to include some random, just crazy thing that, well, here's what I would do. I would ask people for like their favorite like mac and cheese recipe. Or I'd ask them, what's the code? What's the Contra game skip code? And it's like, work it within, put it into your cover letter intellectually. I would do things like that because one, you might get the first two and like, hey, this is my passion. Here's when I did something else, but then they'll miss that other part. And if they miss that other part, what that essentially tells me is that either you weren't paying attention, which kind of disqualifies you, or you didn't care, which also disqualifies you. So that initial situation should filter out a lot of people. The next thing is, as you read through these, a lot of people are going to get cut, right? You shouldn't go through 5,000. You shouldn't have an AI go through 5,000 for you. You shouldn't use a tool that, separates you from that process, especially if these are going to be your initial hires. It is hard. It is overwhelming. It's not going to be something that you enjoy doing. But once you get like a nice handful of people, that's when you actually interview them and talk to them about their cover letter. And that's where you mainly spend the time. Tell me about the issue that you solve. Show me how you think. Walk me through exactly what happened. I have horror stories for months of things that went bump in the night, and I wanted to have a good night's sleep, and it didn't happen. So I could talk about that forever. There are other things that I'm passionate about that I could talk about forever. I could talk about piano. I could talk about fishing, even. I can go deep and talk a person's ear off, but it's those additional things that help people become better engineers and gives them the existing context to do other things than just being an engineer. So now you've filtered on the resume side. You filtered then again on the interview side because some people won't show up for the interview. Some people will kind of sort of try and fake it. And you'll be able to tell pretty easily. You'll be able to know if somebody knows what they're talking about, like from an acquaintance level, or if they know what they're talking about just from the intellectual level. And that's essentially what you're looking for in that process. By that time, you should have maybe 5 or 10 people. Choose a couple and then pay them for the next 30 to 60 days to actually work with you within the code base. And during this time, you do some pair programming. You're not going to get it right unless you're with that person and then you see how they figure out issues, you see how they code. The cool thing about pair programming is a lot of the times you'll actually sometimes I'll learn something new and I'll be excited. There might be a tool out there, or there might be like a special technique that I don't really know about. And then I'll see it and then I'll say, oh, that's interesting. But on the flip side, you could also see like, oh, wow, this person really doesn't know what they're doing. Or I asked them to, open up a pull request and they went into Claude and said, hey, what is a pull request? Unfortunately, it happens. But in working with that person, then you get to know who they are, and then you also get to know how they look like. And the actual hard technical skill, it does matter, but the judgment, the You get to essentially see like what happens if they get stuck. Are they going to go into the documentation? Are they going to take the time to really understand the architecture? A lot of the time when you're pair programming with them, you kind of let them lead and then you see how they're going to do. Now, for those people who don't have an engineering team or are just building out their engineering team, you might be thinking, well, okay, well, if this person's coding and I don't know how to code, like, how do I do that? Get your friend to spend a day or two and then start judging them by their output. Now, you're probably going to have to be within the 60 to 90 days situation, mainly because that's generally around the time where things start to fall apart. So if somebody doesn't really know or they've just been wildly prompting their way into building something that works, one, you'll get the bill, right? If they, you'll get the bill or you'll get a Slack message saying that, hey, I ran out for my credits. And, I know it's been 3 days. I've ran out for my credits for the month. Can I get some more? And again, going back to what I said earlier, $200 to $300 max. Unless you have, so $200 to $300 max for the developer. If you have something that's going on that's like an autonomous system that's doing work that is bringing in money, yep, that doesn't count for the developer. But if they've run out, it says something. It's an indicator. So you want to spend the time to work with them to see how their output is, to see the quality of your product, to see if, things are breaking in the middle of the night, to see if they've actually come to you and they're obsessive about the quality of the code base and making sure that things are moving and working the right way. If they do all of that, then you keep them. If they don't, and things are not working in the right way, and you kind of start to see things slip, then you go back to that original 5 to 10 people pool, and then you speak to the next person until you find the right person. Here's the one thing that I want CEOs and CTOs to take away. There's a story going around that's saying that AI is going to automate everything and you'll never need developers and you'll never need coders, and you're just going to press a button and get the most perfect app that was ever created. It's wrong. It's a lie. It's not going to happen. And it's really being sold to you so that you can spend more AI credits. What you should do instead is take a step back and start hiring for that judgment. Hire for knowing, hire for obsession, hire for the yo-yo champion who is also really, really good at making WordPress websites. Make that hire because it's something that AI can't fake. When you have somebody who knows, not heart knows, but just knows of these things, and they've been spending a lot of time, maybe in your code base, maybe not in your code base, and the AI ships a mistake, it's the person who knows, who really knows the system, who obsesses about all of the intricate things, who obsesses about the architecture, who will take the time to test and to figure out like what went wrong, why it went wrong, and how they could do better. You're going to want to do that because if you have 5 of those on your team, you could pretty much take over the world. And if you are an engineer listening to this, it's the same message, but in reverse. Go out there, become obsessed, find a couple of upcoming stacks and get obsessed. Read the books, read programming books. Those are gold mines. Learn how to think like an engineer, learn the infrastructure, learn the development process. Go out there and build stuff. Build things that you know, that you had the idea in the shower and you're like, yeah, that would be pretty cool. Go out there and build it. Because when you show that passion and when you show that obsession, you're gonna get hired. And That's it for today. If any of this resonated with you, feel free to share it with a founder who needs to hear it. And that's it. That's another episode of the Vermillion Podcast. We are going to continue to keep learning about the things on how to build software in the AI era. I've been your host, Ken Vermeille, and I'm out.
All right.